morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Secrets to Postcard Marketing Success. My name is Jill, and with me today is Amber, and we're going to go through some ideas, some basics for postcards and direct mail pieces, but specifically postcards. Just a couple things before we get started. First of all, this webinar is about an hour long, probably about 45 minutes, and then we will have time for some Q&A at the end. So if you think of some questions along the way, go ahead and type those into the box that you see in your GoToWebinar window, and we'll be happy to answer as many of those as we can at the end of the webinar. The question that we get asked the most on our webinars, even when I say this, we still get asked, is this being recorded? And the answer is yes. We are recording this, and so you will be able to access this a little bit later on. Probably tomorrow I'll have it up on our help site. So if you'd like to go back and take a look at some of the slides or listen to some of the points that we've made, you'll be able to do that. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, this is the agenda for today. We're going to go over a little bit about direct mail postcards in general. A little about lists for postcards. Actually, we're going to go over that quite a bit. We're also going to have lots of examples for you so you can see some things that other people have done with postcards and some ideas to inspire you for your own postcard campaigns. I'm going to take you through our postcard product and show you quickly how to set up postcards. And then, as I said, there will be a Q&A at the end. So let's jump right in. Why postcards? Postcards are one of the least expensive forms of direct mail, and according to eMarketer, they were one of the top marketing tactics with a pretty high ROI. Maybe not quite as high as email, but pretty close. And we've recently surveyed our customers on marketing that they respond to, and direct mail was top of the list. So one of the great things about postcards is you don't have to worry about if they're going to be seen or not because they're already open. So unlike sending a direct mail piece like a letter that's in an envelope, postcards are already open and your recipients will see it. So there's no envelope hiding the message. It's almost impossible for them to do really anything with it, including throw it away, without actually seeing the message that you have on your postcard. And there's also an element of active involvement with postcards because they have to do something with it. Maybe they'll put it on the fridge to save it for later. Maybe whatever service or sale or whatever you're having isn't something that they need right now, but they're going to save it for later. So they'll put it on their fridge, or maybe they'll file it away for the future. But whatever they're doing with your postcard, they have to act. And in that act that they're doing, whatever they're doing with it, they're still going to see your message. So another great thing about postcards is that there isn't a limitation on the sort of list that you can use. There's no do not send direct mail list. So normally when you're sending out just about anything, sending to your internal or house list will be the most effective. If you want to branch out with your postcards, you can rent or buy a list and send postcards to try to grow your list. We, of course, do not allow purchase lists for email addresses in our system, but for postcards, we will allow that if you want to purchase a list for a postcard email. A postcard campaign. Wow.
We talk about email too much.
I do. Postcards are a great way for list building as well. Like I said, you can purchase a list and help drive people to your website, and they can sign up for your emails there. So if you do send out emails, postcards can help grow your email marketing list. And a little bit later on, we will show you some examples of how to incorporate this idea. Actually, I think Amber showed you how to do that. Also, another thing to keep in mind is that email addresses have a tendency to change, or because there's so many things that are available out there for people to set up email addresses, they go stale. And of course, the way the economy has been lately, contact information will change a lot as well. But the nice thing about sending out postcards is that even though you may be sending to somebody who doesn't work at the company anymore, there will be somebody already doing that job or doing something similar to it, and the postcard is going to get delivered to that new person. So your message is still going to arrive to whoever needs to receive the postcard that you're sending. So unlike an email that might bounce, a postcard is still going to be delivered. It's also a great way for you to help keep your list clean because the postcards are sent first class, and so any bad addresses will be returned to you, and then you can update the information in your list about anything that might have changed. So a little bit more about postcards. Postcards can also help you create an integrated approach to your marketing. They work really well with other marketing weapons that you might be using already, like emails. That would be a good example. Telephone calls you might be making, or even personal visits if that's something that's part of your marketing plan. So what you're going to want to do is to establish a frequency that fits your product or your service and whatever kind of offer you're sending out, and then stick with it. So maybe you want to mail a postcard once every 2 weeks for 2 months, or maybe mail one a month, once a month for 6 months. And then this way, you'll keep your company, your service, your products, whatever it is that you're sending on your postcard, the top of mind for your prospects and for very little money. So repetition really works, and this is something we talk about a lot. We talk about that in emails, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this with postcards as well. So if you're consistent, your customers or prospects will eventually have a need for your product or service, and then they'll go to your website or give you a call or come into your shop, something like that, because you have been consistent with your marketing. Postcards can also be targeted, and that might be something targeted and trackable. That might be something that you're thinking, wow, how in the world do you do that? But as I said before, it's pretty easy to get a list of postcard or postal addresses, postcard addresses, however you want to look at that. So you could mail to a specific list um, for people who have a specific interest. You could have a list broken up based on zip code. So if you wanted to send out a postcard to people in a specific area, you could do that. Maybe a neighborhood or even a specific demographic. So you can make sure that your postcard is getting to the people that you want to have see it. And then as far as being trackable, you can actually track what's going on with a postcard. Not like what you can do with an email. So like in your vertical response account with the emails, you can see who's opening, who's clicking on links, things like that. But with the postcard, there are some things you can do to see how effective it is. And Amber's going to talk quite a bit about this later on, but you could certainly do something like a landing page that you put, a specific landing page on the postcard. Maybe if they need to call your business, they can specify that they saw the postcard that you sent, or even bring in the postcard to your shop or to an event, and then you know how effective your postcard marketing is. Postcards are also very easy, especially if you're using our system. We have images you can use, or you can upload your own image. You add a little bit of text and then launch it, and we do all of the hard work. So we have a printer. We're going to send them out for you. So they're very easy to create and send out, but they're pretty powerful because, as I said before, your recipients are going to see your message no matter what when they're looking at your postcard. So they're kind of like mini billboards. It's also easy for your recipients because when they're getting their mail and they're walking back from their mailbox, as they're sifting through their mail, there's no doubt that they're going to see the postcard that you've sent them because, again, they don't have to undo it. So even before they've gotten to their house, they'll see the message that you're sending to them.
Okay, so now that Jill talked about the why to use postcards, we're going to move on over to the when to use postcards. And we have a list of ideas here that you could try for your business. So the first one that we have is driving email signups to your house list. So, for example, if you have a list of people that haven't opted into your email list, but you want them to, you can send them a postcard and simply ask them to go to your website to sign up. And this is a great way to track the postcard success. You could have a specific URL or landing page or opt-in form that you drive them to, and then that way you know, okay, they're coming from the postcard that I sent. And you could even provide an incentive for people to opt in. That's a really good way to get,
Yeah.
more email addresses. We all know that works. And that's another way to track the success because you can just see who redeemed the offer. Okay, they got the incentive, they got the postcard. So that's one thing that you can do. Another good time to use postcards as is at trade shows. So often trade shows will actually provide a pre and post show list. So if you're going to be there, have a booth, presenting, whatever it is that you're doing, you can contact those people that are going to be attending the trade show. So you can't actually email them before unless they've opted in already and gave you explicit permission to email them. But as Jill said, there isn't a do not mail list for postcards, so you can send the people that will be attending the trade show a postcard before the show and let them know that you're going to be there and encourage them to take some action with your business. Another thing that you can do is follow up after the show and provide people discounts that came to your booth, talked to you, and if you did get them to opt into your email at that time, you could also send them an email follow-up as well. So trade shows are a great one, and we will have some examples of that to show you in a little bit. So overall, postcards are actually a great marketing tool for events, not just trade shows, but save the dates. You can use them as invitations. If you're having a physical event, like maybe an art show at a gallery or a music concert, you can use them as a ticket. People can bring that in for entry. If you're doing the trade show thing, you can provide the booth location on your postcard so they can bring that and know where to find you. Event follow-ups, reminders. The list really goes on, and we have a bunch of examples. It's just a great way to supplement any of your marketing campaigns. Really helps get a great response. As Jill said, they don't have to open the postcard, so your message is really not likely to be missed. So we all know that there's a lot of inbox clutter. A recent statistic is that people receive an average of 100 emails a day. Marketing messages, that's a lot. I'm signed up on so many mailing lists, I can't even count.
Yeah, I
So,
think I get more than 100 a day.
yeah. So it's really possible that your email is missed, but people are interested to see it. Sometimes it's just so overwhelming. If it's a weekend, I might scan a lot faster than usual and delete things that I may actually be interested in. So just because somebody's not taking an action with your email, it doesn't mean that they're not interested in what you have to say. So you could actually send a postcard to non-responders of an email campaign, and that way they don't miss your message. Another way to integrate it with your email marketing program is bounced email addresses. So these are people that don't even have a chance to receive your email. Perhaps their email address isn't valid anymore, it changed, they're not at that job, whatever the reason is, they could be interested in what you have to offer or tell them, but they're missing the communications because it's not making it into their inbox anymore. So you can send those people a postcard with or without an offer and ask them to resubscribe to your email list using a different email address. Something like, hey, we noticed your email address changed, or, we can't reach you anymore. We don't want you to miss out. You're important to us, that kind of thing. And it's likely that you can get people to re opt in.
I've seen people send postcards with a picture of like a basketball bouncing,
Mhm.
just to let the recipients on their email list know that their email address bounced. So you could probably find a picture of a ball just in our image gallery, and that's kind of
Definitely.
fun and it's eye catching. Or you might have another
And
idea
half
for that.
the time, people, they probably don't even know, right, that
Yeah,
they're not getting the message anymore. So.
yeah. So it's a great way to help keep your list strong. So speaking of lists,
Yeah.
we're going to talk a little bit about lists here for a little while. Um, so as I said earlier, your best bet for your mailing list is to mail to your current customers or your house list. But if you want to expand a little bit and maybe expand your database, you have some other options for your lists. So one of the things that you can do is either rent or purchase a list. So there could be a place for you to start for renting a list is maybe a publication or an organization that has similar interests as you or similar interests as your customers. And you can ask about renting a list from them. You can, of course, use a list broker, and basically what they would do is research and recommend lists for you, and then they'll manage the paperwork and other details of renting the list. So, for example, they can help you find a list of businesses or consumers who have purchased products or services that are similar to what you offer or what your company offers, or for example, maybe fall into a specific demographic or income range or whatever you're trying to reach, whatever specific part of the population you're trying to reach, they can help you find those types of lists for you. The one thing that you want to keep in mind, though, is you want them to have a good reputation because you're going to be spending money, and so you want to make sure that the lists that they're finding are good ones. Um, and then as far as renting or buying, there are some pros and cons to each of them. So these are some of the things to keep in mind when you're thinking about renting or buying a postcard list. Again, you can only do postcards and not emails. So if you're wanting to rent a list, probably the biggest difference between renting or purchasing a list is that a rented list has a limited mailing, and generally speaking, it's going to be a one-time mailing. So that can kind of limit what you're trying to do, especially if you're doing the repetition that we had talked about before. If you're only allowed to mail to the list one time, that can be kind of a tough thing for trying to keep your business top of mind. But it could be that you have a plan to mail just once anyway. So renting might be the way for you to go. The other thing with renting is that you're dependent on a third party's sources for the accuracy of the information. So you want to keep in mind, again, that you want a good list if you're going to be renting one. And you want to see how much information you're going to be getting. Because, again, with a rented list, you may not have as much information as you might want on a list. Purchasing a list, generally speaking, you're going to be able to do whatever you want with the data, which includes sending to it more than one time. So you'll be able to mail on a regular basis if you wanted to do that. But the thing about purchasing a list is that they're almost always going to be more expensive than renting a list. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. And of course, you can build your own list, and we would certainly recommend doing that. And as I said, building your own list is probably the best way to go because that will be your internal list. Amber's going to cover that in just a few minutes, so you're going to see a little bit how to help build your own internal mailing list. But just a little bit more on renting a list. As I said, this one has some limitations, so I'm going to talk a little bit about it. Again, a good reputation is important, how recent the data is. And then one of the things that I would like to point out is the CPM pricing. So basically, the mailing list pricing is usually based on a cost per thousand. So that's what the CPM is, cost per thousand. And in most cases, mailing list brokers will enforce a minimum charge, and generally speaking, it's around $500. And it doesn't really matter what size your list is. So even if you're buying a fairly small list, there's still going to be a pretty hefty price on the rental for the list. So the thing that I would recommend if you're considering purchasing or renting a mailing list is when you're doing your postcard campaign, keep in mind that the whole picture on how much it's costing for you to send out your postcards and what the return on the value is going to be. So keep in mind the printing costs. If you're a small business, maybe you don't have an internal creative team. So if you have to pay for someone to create the creative on the front, the image on the front, keep that in mind. Again, list costs. So determine what your budget is going to be for the whole printing and renting and everything, and then see what you need in return to break even on sending out a postcard if you have to purchase or rent a list. So here are some resources for you, and again, as I said, we are recording this, so you'll be able to take a look at this. I don't think you're going to be able to write all of these down while I talk. So there's a couple of things. The ones at the top, InfoUSA and Melissa Data, are list sources for B2C, basically. So they're basically lists of consumers and a little bit about businesses, but for the most part, they're basically for consumers. And so keep that in mind. The Direct Marketing Association actually has a really good tool. That's the third one on there. That helps you find lists. So if you go to the DMA website, dma.org, and then click on the Resources tab, you'll be able to search for mailing lists there. And then you can type in parameters. So whatever you're looking for, if it's a certain demographic, people who have certain interests, whatever you're looking for, you can type that into their web page, and then it'll bring up lists that fall into those parameters and the price for using those lists. And then the rest of the lists that I have on here are really more B2B. So D&B, which is Dun and Bradstreet, Idea, Idea Exec, Jigsaw. Jigsaw is great if you have an email address and you're looking for the postal address. They actually have sources for you to be able to pull up that type of information. So these are some list resources out there. There are others, but like I said, if you want to go and take a look at list resources, just make sure they have a really good reputation before you start using or paying for their service.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about list building. As Jill mentioned, it's always more effective to mail to your house list than to rent a list or even buy a list. You'll get better response with people that have expressed interest in your company and opted in. So that is something to keep in mind. So it's really important, even if you're renting or buying a list, to continue to build your house mailing list, email and postal addresses. So the first way to do this is to start with an opt-in form on your website. And at Vertical Response, we do offer free opt-in forms. It's part of the service here. So you can see an example of an opt-in form on this screen. So this is where you want to drive people and collect their information. And you can specify what you want to make mandatory and what's voluntary, but obviously email address, name, postal address if you want to go that far. You could also start with email and then encourage people to come back and continue to fill in the information as they build their profile and that sort of thing. So it's really not that difficult to build a list. It's just something that you need to continue to do over time because there is list attrition. So people do bounce, they unsubscribe, so you want to continue to grow it, but it has to grow faster than people are opting out of it. So a great way to do this is to get everybody involved. Any level of your company can help you do this, be it customer service, call transactions. If people are on the phones, just ask, are you on our mailing list? Here's why you should join. If you have a storefront and you have like a fishbowl, people could drop in their business cards. That's a really great way, especially if you're going to do like a drawing or something. Just say, by putting in your card, you're be entered in a drawing. By the way, you're opting into our mailing list. Make sure that people are aware
Yes.
that you will be emailing them
or sending postcards.
Exactly. Excuse me. So that's another good way to get that information. You could create a refer friend program, which is just incentivizing people that are already on your list to refer friends or colleagues to your business as well. And that's a great way. I mean, people buy from people. People take advice from their friends. There's, Yelp is an example where people really care about resources and referrals and other people's experiences. So if a friend says, hey, there's this great company out there, you should join this list, it's really likely that they will. So there are lots of ways to mobilize your company, your employees, and your other customers and recipients to help you collect this information and keep building the list. And then now we're going to move on to some postcard best practices. So this is a little bit more about creating the postcard now that you have your list and you know who you're going to be mailing to. So the first thing to keep in mind is that you really want to limit the postcard scope, and this is the best approach is one main idea per postcard. There is a limited amount of space, obviously. So if you're going to cram a whole bunch of stuff on there, it might be confusing, and your message might get missed. So it's a really good idea to have one major product or idea per postcard. And of course, if you have more than one thing that you want to promote, you could always do multiple postcards or do a series, that sort of thing. So just start with one and go from there. And so that being said, you should have one dominant image on the non-address side of the postcard. So this is the front of the postcard. And the image should support your headline or your call to action. So together, they must identify and engage the audience, the image and the message. And then really focus on the offer. So a good offer and a solid promise of value is what will motivate people to respond. A really pretty postcard can be nice, but if it's not clear what you're offering, or if you don't even really give a value or ask them to do anything, it's kind of a wasted experience. So even before you worry about the wording or the design of the postcard, just be sure to focus on your offer. What is it that you're offering? What's the whole point behind this postcard? And then think about what's the incentive that's going to make people say, okay, I really want to take action on this. And then speaking of action, you want to clearly define your call to action on the postcard communication. We call this internally CTA. It's the same thing with email. We talk about call to action buttons, but this is like what the trigger is. This is what people see, and they're like, okay, I'm going to do this. I want to learn more about this. I'm going to respond and take the action that they're asking me to do because this is a really good offer. There's a good value. So think about the call to action. It should support the main idea and the offer. And then some experts say that 40% of your direct mail campaign success is dependent on the list. So we've talked a lot about lists, and you want to make sure that you're matching your offer to the right list, the right group of people. So you want to think about who is the ideal audience for the postcard that I'm mailing, and then target that group. So if you're talking about, for example, mailing for a gallery or art show that you're having in San Francisco, you want to mail to people in San Francisco. It doesn't make sense to get a zip code of people in New York. So that's a really simple example of targeting a list properly. So maybe you're trying to target people who haven't purchased a certain type of product before from you. If you have that information in your database, just download that and then create the postcard around that product and the call to action, maybe a discount, and send it out, and it will make sense to that audience. So identify them in your house list. If you want to expand the list, you can also use resources that we discussed, like the rentals or purchase lists. And just make sure, of course, that you're using a good resource and sending to people who meet your ideal audience criteria. And then the other one is the next thing I'll talk about is repetition of your message really works. So the idea of just a one and done isn't always that effective. Sometimes people need to see your message 3 times, 5 times, which is why it's really good to integrate all of your marketing campaigns together and efforts with a postcard, with email, with an ad on your login page, with a specific landing page. With somebody mentioning it at the end of a phone call or a in-store transaction. Just make sure it happens over and over again. It's the repetition that really works. Think about, can I send this campaign more than once? Do I want to send it, once a month for 3 months, and then on the third month send to non-responders of the campaign, that sort of thing, or third month send to non-responders of the email messages that I sent out as well. So you can figure out what is the best strategy for you. And then, of course, tracking. So you really want to track and measure the success of all of your marketing efforts, because that's how you figure out, is it increasing the bottom line? What's the ROI? Is this effective for us to do? So postcards and email, of course, do have a really good ROI, so that's a positive place to start. But you want to track for your business and see how effective is it really. And there are lots of ways to do this. We talked about that. You could also split up your offer. So have 2 different postcards, split your list in half, and see does one creative work better than the other, and have maybe like a different code word or secret word on the postcard so that when they email or call in, they say that word and then you know what postcard they came through. Or send them to a different landing page and then have tracking on the landing page, and that way you know exactly what postcard did they come through. Or you could try different lists. What list did they come through? And that's a really good way to figure out how successful it is.
So just a couple other things to keep in mind when you're creating your postcards, and then we will get into the fun example part, which everyone likes. So, of course, or hopefully you think this already, but postcards take longer than emails do, and there's more lead time and planning involved in postcards than generally when you're creating an email. So first of all, you need to make sure that you're budgeting in time for whoever's designing the front of your postcard to get it done. And it can be something really basic. And again, we do have images you can use in our system, which I'll show you a little bit later on. But if you have somebody who's designing your postcard, you need to keep in mind that they'll need some lead time for that. You also need to plan for printing the postcard and then also mailing the postcard. So in our system, once you click the launch button, it takes about 8 to 10 days for you to receive the postcard in the mail. So that doesn't include any of the creative part, creating the front of your postcard or writing or whatever. So you need to plan at least 10 days to launch your postcard at least 10 days in advance of when you want it to arrive in your recipient's mailboxes. You probably want to try, if it's possible, to avoid having your postcard end up in a mailbox on a Monday because those tend to be heavier mail days just because there's no mail delivery on Sundays. The other thing to keep in mind are federal holidays, like we had on Monday. Because obviously the mail isn't going to be delivered on Monday, it also wasn't delivered on Sunday. The other thing that I've noticed, and I used to manage our postcard product for quite a while, is for every one day that the post office is closed, it isn't one extra day for delivery. It tends to be more like 2 days. So where it would normally take maybe 2 or 3 days for you to get it in your post or your mailbox, it could take 5 days just because of one day holiday for the post office. So if you're scheduling your postcard to go out, just keep in mind, if you're looking at the calendar, if there's a federal holiday when the post office is closed, you're going to need to build in a little extra lead time for your postcard to arrive when you actually want it to arrive. The average response rates for postcards is between 1 and 3%. It can depend also on the people you're mailing to, because it could be that it's an active list that you have that you mail to regularly. Maybe you have a fabulous offer, and that will make them want to react as well. So you could see a higher response rate than that. One of the things that's great about postcards is that generally the responses won't come all at one time. They have a tendency to build over time, so kind of like a snowball effect. So some people will respond as soon as they get your postcard, and some, as I mentioned before, might just put it on their refrigerator and save it for later when they have a need for your product or services. So this is actually great because this will allow you to build a steady stream of business instead of having it all happen all at one time. And then just a couple things to keep in mind. This is a great opportunity for you to clean up your list. So before you send out your postcards, just go through your list and see what information you have. If you know you have some bad addresses in there or some bad contacts, keep them out of your list if you already know that ahead of time. So you might want to set up just a little bit of time before you do your postcards just to go through your list, especially if it's an internal list. Also, another thing to keep in mind is that if you're making an offer on a postcard, just make sure that your business is prepared to deliver whatever it is that you're offering. So make sure you've thought through whatever resources or employees or stock needs that you're going to have in order to fulfill the people who are going to be coming in with the postcard offer that you have. So as I said, we have postcard examples, and this is what everybody likes. So the next few slides, we're basically going to give you some examples of postcards that have gone through our system, as well as some ideas for sending postcards as well. And again, it is being recorded. You can look at these later. So also, I'll probably put the slides up on our help site as well, so you can take a look at the slides if you don't want to hear Amber and I's lovely voices. So one of the things that we've talked about a couple of times today so far is using postcards for events. And these are some examples of events that postcards were used for in our system. One of them that I really like is the one in the top right-hand corner, Brintech. They sent out a postcard for a trade show that they were going to be at, and they have their booth information on there, and that's one of the things that we said was a great thing to do for a trade show. Since you can't usually email them because they have not opted in to receive your email specifically, you can send a postcard. So this is a great way for you to drive traffic to your booth at a trade show. And what Brintech did was include, if you brought your postcard, you could get a complimentary coffee card. Inexpensive way to get people to come to your trade show or to your booth at the trade show. The other thing that they did was, for the people who did stop by with their postcard, they did some follow-up afterwards, and they were able to send out a postcard to thank the people who came by, and they also followed up with a phone call just to keep touch with the people who were most interested in what they were offering. The one on the bottom left also is an invitation to a trade show, and it has their booth location on there. And then the one on the right is an invitation to a seminar. So that's another great way to help get people to come. You can send emails, but it's also kind of fun to send a postcard. It is a different way to invite people to seminars or conferences. And again, it's something physical that they can put in their cube at work to remind them that they want to go to this particular seminar that you're presenting.
So this example is an example of refer a friend, which I was talking about earlier. It's really cute. It's pretty eye-catching. One dominant image. Very clear what it is on the front. One message. So overall, very great. It did have a company name. We blocked that out. But so overall, very good creative. And refer a friend, as I said, is just a great way to get your customers and contacts to bring you more business. So word of mouth referrals are very valuable. And an example like this, a postcard like this, on the back you could have an offer that says, pass this along to a friend. If your friend makes a purchase or joins our list or whatever, you'll get something, and so will your friend. So it's a win-win for everybody. In this example in particular, they offered free licenses worth $500 or $100 gift certificate at Amazon if the customer referred a friend and then the friend made a purchase. Another thing that they did was they had a specific web page with more details on the referral, so that they could track the website traffic as well and see if they were getting referrals from their customers and give their customers and referrals more information.
So postcards can also be a great way to make announcements, and announcements about just about anything. The example in the top right, the winery, was just announcing that their wine club shipment was available, and people could come by and pick up their wine club. And they also were inviting them to a tasting, and that was on the back of the postcard. So the front, they told them that the wines were available, and on the back, they could come get their club and also taste. Steinway on the left sends out announcements a lot with postcards, and they use them for a lot of things. Price increases. Also, if they have some special financing for making a purchase, they send postcards for that. They also do event invitations, so you can use a postcard to invite people to a specific event. Educational programs, and even regional programs. So they use postcards for a lot of different types of announcements. You can also use it for letting people know something new about your business. So if you have a new location, that would be a great reason to send out a postcard. If you're changing your business hours, another good reason to send out a postcard. Again, it'll be something that people will have in their hand, so they can easily find your new location or see what your new hours are or your new contact information. And again, to help keep you top of mind.
And this is an example of using postcards to tout your success or good news. So if you've had some really good success at your business, you can promote that to people in the area, to current customers. They'll be happy to hear it. So sharing news is another thing you can do with the postcards. What we have here is an example of a real estate agency, and they sold a bunch of houses in a specific area. So what they did was they sent this to other people in the area that could be looking to purchase a new home or to sell their home, and it's a great way to get business. And then, of course, yeah, target the homeowners in that zip code or the geographic. There are other things you can do like this. If you have testimonials, if you have achievements, if you won an award, if you were nominated for something and you need a vote, those are all things that you can send out to your customers and prospects via postcards.
So another good reason to use a postcard would be for notifications, and I have a couple of examples here. If the name of your product or company is changing, that would be a good time to send out a postcard. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, obviously, your recipients would probably want to know that information, especially if your company name was changing. But this will also have an impact on your email campaign. So if you're sending out emails on a regular basis, but you have your company name changing, giving your recipients advance notification that something's going to be changing, especially with like a postcard, when they get the email with the new company name in it, they're not going to be surprised. It'll be something that they're expecting, and they'll open your email as they have been. So that's a great way to let people know. Or if some type of service is going to be changing, on the bottom right-hand side, the NWP postcard had a change in how they were going to be people were going to be making payments so that's why it says what it says on there. Um, and they sent out a series of postcards, and the postcards had similar graphics, but they were all different colors. So they were very eye-catching for the people who received the postcards, and it was just a series to help remind people that big changes were coming in the way they were handling payments. You could also let people know if you have a regular service that is maybe expiring, you can let them know through a postcard. Or if there's a service that they pay for with a credit card, if a credit card expired, you can let them know. And that's what the one on the bottom left is. So on the back it said, did you receive a new credit card? Was it expired or replaced? Unfortunately, we were unable to obtain authorization on your credit card. So then they offered people to come in and update the information so that they could continue to get their, in this example, wine club shipment. So sending a postcard is a great way also to let people know if there's something going on with a service that you offer.
So, some more postcard examples. These are comeback messages, and we talk about this a lot in email marketing as well. Essentially, just people that have become inactive. So, if they're inactive with your company, they might not be checking your emails either. So, a postcard's a really great way to make sure that that your customers or audience knows that you miss them. So these are just really eye-catching, really, really cute baby comebacks, so adorable. Who can, deny a baby? And we heard, and we're not happy. That's probably, someone's leaving your company, making a switch to a different business or something of that sort. And then, of course, you can offer an incentive on the back to get your customers to come back. And then this is just a whole slew of other great postcard ideas. A lot of them we've talked about. For example, driving signups to your house list. So in the bottom right corner, this is an example from a restaurant, the Barley House. And they did a really good job of welcoming new people to the area, and then they asked them to sign up for the newsletter. And then if they signed up for the newsletter, they would get a coupon for 50% off the first meal. So it builds their email mailing list, and it gets people into the restaurant. So that is phenomenal, and it targets people that are new to the area. It's perfect combination.
Yeah, that's a great postcard.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, you could do thank yous, and there's just a cute little kid there. That was for a birthday party or something of the sort. And then you can do happy birthdays to your customers. It's a really great loyalty program. We definitely recommend doing this to our customers all the time. You could also do it for anniversaries, anniversary of the customer's first purchase with you, when they, first joined your list or whatever. And it just lets your customers know that you care about them. And then, of course, you can offer an incentive as well. And it's actually my birthday this month, later this month, and I've received tons of email campaigns and postcards and little things in the mail from various mailing lists and businesses that I use, and it's been really heartwarming.
So just a couple of things of what not to do. I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit because we want to get through a quick demo before we take your questions. So we saw lots of fabulous examples of things to do with your postcards, and we have 2 examples of what not to do. So first of all, one of the things, no matter what you're doing, if you're sending out an email, if you're sending out a postcard, make sure that you have somebody else proofreading what you're sending out before you do it. Because this example, if you look on the left, has a typo in the service that they offer. It says 10% off carpet and upholstery cleaning, and I'm sure what they meant was carpet. The creative is great, and I love the sense of urgency that they have with the image that they have on the front. Just make sure somebody's proofreading before you send out your postcard or emails. The other thing is that they have put way too much information on the back, and this is really what is the biggest problem. A typo happens, but they've written a novel on the back of their postcard. There's just way too much going on there. It's too hard to read. Even if you're 20 and have young eyes, it's hard to read font that small. And nobody wants to spend that much time reading this much information on a postcard. So you want to make sure you have a very clear call to action. As Amber said before, you don't want to have quite this much text on the back because nobody's going to spend the time reading it. The other problem, and this isn't something you would necessarily run into with vertical response because we have it set up in a specific way, but the other problem is is those two red circles where the post office has messed up the information. And they didn't mess it up specifically to mess up their postcard, but the scan bar has gone over part of the text on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, there's another tag that they put on there, and that's covering up the logo as well as some of the contact information. So keep in mind, especially if you're putting this much data on the back of your postcard, that the post office needs some space as well. So leave a little bit of room for that. And then this is one other example of what not to do.
Oh, man.
This one just isn't really focused. So try to make sure that you're not putting something quite so busy on the front of your postcard. You know, you want one dominant image with one call to action. Try not to confuse the people who are looking at your postcard. So this is some additional information, and I might put this back up after I do the demo. And again, it's recorded, so you can always get this. So if you're looking for a little bit of help with your postcard, we do have some tutorial videos on our help site. If you just go to help.verticalresponse.com and click on postcards, you'll get all kinds of information there. If you're interested in postcard pricing, you can go to the main verticalresponse.com website and click on pricing, and you'll see where the postcard information is. One of the things to keep in mind, and one of the great things about using postcards through our system, is that there's no minimums. A lot of printing places have like a minimum of 500. Vertical Response, the smallest amount you can buy is one postcard, and then you can go up from there. That's entirely up to you. We have two different sizes, 4x6 and 6x9. The paper, we always get asked this question, is 110, and it's glossy. There's a UV coating that's put on your postcard to help protect it through all those machines that they go through in the post office. It is partially recycled material, and it is Forest Stewardship Council certified. If you're interested in that, there is a URL. You can go check that out. And one last thing, the Vertical Response Lounge has lots of information just in general on using our system, but specifically there is a postcard marketing section if you want to go talk to some other people. It's basically a forum, so you can talk to whoever else is in there about your efforts for doing your direct postcard marketing or what they've done as well. And
yes, and we have a postcard sale going on right now. So we are offering 10% off postcards, as little or as much as you would like to order, until June 16th. So it's a really good deal.
15th.
15th. So sorry. Until June 15th. I don't know why I read that. I guess the 6th was what I saw.
6th, yes.
But so now's the time if you want to give it a try and you haven't, or you've tested it and you're like, okay, I want to go through with this. Summer is a great time to take advantage of this as well. So I would recommend doing that.
And you don't need any special code. It's just automatic.
Yes.
When you make your purchase, you automatically get 10% off until June 15th. So let me quickly bring up a Vertical Response account. I'm just going to go show you really quickly some of the things you can do with the postcards, and then we'll start taking your questions, as I said before. So first of all, hopefully you all have a VR account, and this is what the postcards look like. This section for the postcards looks like. You just click on the tab here to get to this. You can see your drafts, so the postcards that haven't been sent out, and then the sent postcards are the ones that have been sent to the printer, and then you can track. Once you see the date they've been sent, then it's 8 to 10 days from then to show up in your mailbox. But to get started, you just need to click New, either here in this drop-down menu or New Postcard on this tab. Either one takes you to the same place. And then our system is just going to walk you through. It's just like creating an email. We're going to walk you through. So the first thing is you need to give it a name. And this is not anything printed on your postcard. So this is just for you to keep track of what's going on with your postcard. You have 3 options for creating your email or your postcard. Wow, I say email too much. You can upload your own image. So as I said before, if somebody is creating that main image for the front of your postcard, you can upload it. The one thing you need to keep in mind, or the 2 things you need to keep in mind really, is it has to be a JPEG for your postcard, and it has to be at least 150 dpi, but higher would be better because this is actually going to be printed. So the higher resolution your image is, the better the print quality will be. Or you can use one of the images from Vertical Response. So we have 75,000 images that you can use. The great thing about using one of our stock images is that you can also use it in conjunction with an email campaign. So you can have the same image, tie them together. So I am going to pull in a picture. This is one of my favorites. So you can either select from our different categories, or you can do a search. I just grabbed one because I'm trying to do this quickly. Clicking next is going to bring up some of the tools that you can use to make edits to your postcard. So you can select whether you want 4x6 or 6x9. Now, one of the great things about using our system is adding text to the front. So if you're just using one of our images, you can easily put text just by clicking wherever you want it to go, typing in what you want it to say, and then you can select your font, the face, and even the color. So if I do this, here's a sample of what my text is going to look like. If I click Save, that's going to pop it right onto the front of my postcard. Now, if I decide I don't like where this is at, I can just grab the text and move it someplace else. So you can easily move your text around once you have it on your postcard. So that gives you a little bit of flexibility when you're creating your postcard. Once you have your front set up, and you can flip your images up here, you can crop it if you want to, you can change it to black and white if you want. You can even change your image if you need to do that. So there's a lot of options up here for just making some edits to the image. Once it's set, go ahead and click to the next tab, and this is where you're going to set up your message. Again, you have an option of fonts. You also have an option of sizes. It's going to depend on the font you select and the size, how much information you can put on the back. So it depends, again, on what you're choosing, how much text you can put. But again, you don't want to write a novel because no one's going to take the time to read all of that. Our system will pull in your from address from the account section. So just like creating an email, if you have a postal address set up in here, our system will pull that in for your return address, although you can change that. You do need to view the proofs. This is just like sending an email test. You do need to view the proofs, and there's actually a code on the proofs that you need to launch your postcard, so make sure you're viewing it. You can select your mailing list. I don't remember if I have one in here with any, oh, that one doesn't have addresses on here. You can select one list, you can select multiple lists. We'll tell you what you're mailing to, and our system is automatically going to check to make sure that it's a valid address with the USPS. So we do use a software program called CAS through the USPS to make sure that your postcard addresses are still good. So hopefully you'll be mailing to some good ones. Oops, I already submitted that. Schedule. Now, on the postcards, when you schedule it, you'll probably want earliest launch available, which is the default, because the postcard won't be sent to the printer until the date you select. So if you were to select June 16th as when you want your postcard to go out, we won't send it to the printer until June 16th. So that is not the date it will arrive. That's the date it will be sent, and then it will be 10 days after that when people will start seeing them in their post box. So just make sure you're scheduling it for when you want it to go to the printer, not when you want it to arrive. And then the last step is sending it out. So on this page, as I said, you need to enter your codes. We'll tell you how many addresses you're mailing to. Obviously, I didn't have any postal addresses in those lists. And then you can purchase your postcards from here. Paying for your postcards is not the same as paying for your emails. So you can't use email credits for the postcards. You're just going to purchase the number of postcards you need from this step, and then you'll finish the launch process.